The morning sun cast long shadows over Lincoln High School as students shuffled through the halls, clutching backpacks and half-eaten breakfast sandwiches. For most, it was just another school day. For 17-year-old Zara Thompson, it was the morning after the test, the advanced mathematics exam she'd spent weeks preparing for. She walked into Mr. Grayson's classroom, clutching her notebook tightly to her chest, heart fluttering with a quiet anticipation. Her mind replayed the problems she'd solved, the formulas she'd memorized, the late nights spent at the kitchen table with scribbled notes and textbooks. Zara wasn't just prepared, she was confident. But the moment she stepped inside, she felt it. A strange silence hung in the air like a fog. Her classmates sat quietly, some exchanging glances, others pretending not to look at her. And there he was, Mr. Leonard Grayson, standing at the front of the classroom, arms folded, a stack of graded test papers on his desk. His eyes locked on Zara the moment she entered, and they didn't blink. Zara's steps slowed. She made her way to her seat, trying to ignore the tightness in her chest. As she sat down, Logan Barrett, who sat one row behind her, leaned forward just enough to whisper, "This should be good." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. She'd earned that grade. Whatever he was implying didn't matter. "Let's begin," Grayson said after a long pause, his voice tight. He picked up the stack of papers and began walking through the aisles, handing them back one by one. Some students groaned quietly at their scores. Others chuckled or exchanged notes. But when he reached Zara, he stopped. He stared at her for a moment, then slowly placed the paper face down on her desk. No words. No nod. Zara turned it over. 100%. The red ink was bold and unmistakable. A perfect score. Her eyes widened, and for a brief second, pride welled up in her chest. But the moment didn't last. A hush fell over the class again. Grayson had returned to the front of the room and was now staring at the whiteboard, as if trying to suppress something. Then, without turning around, he spoke. "This," he said, tapping the board with a marker, "is impossible." The words cut through the room like a blade. Zara's head snapped up. "Excuse me?" she said. Grayson turned slowly, holding her test paper in his hand. "No one in my 15 years of teaching has ever gotten a perfect score on this test. Not Logan, not Macy, not anyone. And suddenly, you do?" Whispers rippled through the room. Logan snickered. Macy hid her smirk behind her hand. Zara sat straighter. "I studied. A lot. I practiced every night. I earned that score." Grayson's jaw tightened. "Show me your notes." The demand wasn't just rude. It was accusatory. "I did most of it in my head," she said. "In your head?" he echoed mockingly. "So, you expect me to believe you mentally calculated college-level calculus without any notes?" "I didn't cheat," Zara said firmly. Grayson didn't flinch. "Then, prove it." He walked to her desk and slapped a blank sheet of paper down in front of her. "Let's see you solve the 3 toughest problems from the test. Right now." Gasps echoed around the classroom. Even students who had been trying to stay uninvolved were now glued to the unfolding drama. Zara stared at the paper. Her hands trembled slightly. "Why don't you make Logan or Macy redo their answers?" she asked, voice controlled but fierce. "They didn't get a perfect score. You did," Grayson said coldly. "Now, either you prove it or you accept the consequences." Something inside Zara snapped. She stood up. "Maybe the real issue here," she said loudly, "is that you don't believe a black girl can be smarter than your favorite white students." A wave of stunned silence swept over the class. Grayson's face turned crimson. "Excuse me." "You heard me," Zara said. You've never called on me. You've never praised me when I got the answer right. But now that I beat everyone, suddenly, I must have cheated? Grayson stepped closer, his voice a low hiss. You're out of line. No, you are, she shot back. The room was frozen. No one moved. No one laughed. Then, the door opened. Principal Marcus Dean stepped inside. Tall, composed, dressed in his signature navy blazer, he looked around the classroom before locking eyes with Mr. Grayson. Mr. Grayson, he said evenly, can I have a word? Grayson tensed. Sir, I was just… Dean raised a hand. Now. Zara didn't look away. As Grayson stalked out of the room, his jaw clenched. The whispers began again the moment the door shut. Logan leaned back in his chair. Guess the little genius act didn't work. Zara didn't respond. Her eyes were locked on the door. Something was happening. Something bigger than just a grade. Zara didn't sleep much that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind a whirlpool of faces and voices. Mr. Grayson's sneering accusations, Logan's taunts, Principal Dean's calm authority, the round of applause echoing in the auditorium, and the faint but sharp sting of doubt from people who still didn't believe her. Her phone buzzed on her nightstand. You awake? It was from Chloe. Zara stared at the screen for a moment before replying. Yeah. A few seconds later, another message popped up. Proud of you. Tomorrow's gonna be weird, but I've got your back. Zara smiled faintly, typing back a quick thank you before turning the phone face down and letting out a long breath. Tomorrow was going to be weird. Monday morning. Lincoln High's Zara stepped through the school's front doors and immediately felt every pair of eyes swivel toward her. Whispers followed her down the hall like a shadow. Is that her? Yeah, that's the girl who got Grayson fired. She's the one who got the scholarship, right? No way I could have handled that. She's got nerves of steel. Zara kept her head high. Her braids were pulled back neatly, and her outfit was sharp. Crisp white blouse, high-waisted jeans, and a deep green jacket. She had dressed with purpose today. If people were going to stare, they might as well see confidence. Chloe caught up to her near the lockers. You okay? She asked, eyes scanning the crowd. Zara nodded. Just tired, but yeah, I'm okay. People are going to talk. Let them. You stood up for yourself. Zara smiled, grateful. Thanks. As they rounded the corner to first period, they passed the math room. The door was locked. Grayson's nameplate was still on it. Someone had scrawled racist across the name in thick black marker. Zara stopped and stared for a moment. It didn't make her feel triumphant, just heavy. You should tell Dean, Chloe whispered. Zara shook her head. Let them see it. Second period. History. Mr. Davenport paused when he saw her. Zara, he said, his voice kind. Can I have a quick word before you sit? The class quieted. She approached his desk, anxiety prickling under her skin. I just wanted to say, he said quietly, what happened last week, that was courage. You stood tall, and you made a lot of us reflect on what we've overlooked. Zara blinked. Thank you. If there's anything you need, he said, I've got you. She nodded again, this time with a lump in her throat. But not everyone was kind. By lunchtime, the tension had split the cafeteria like a crack down a mirror. One side was buzzing with quiet admiration and tentative support. Mostly the underdogs, the quiet kids, the ones who knew what it felt like to be underestimated. The other side, Logan Barrett's crowd, was a fortress. Macy Whitfield looked up from her salad as Zara walked by. Guess she got the whole school wrapped around her little victim complex, she muttered loudly enough to be heard. Zara didn't stop. She didn't even flinch. but Chloe did. "What's your problem?" she snapped, spinning to face Macy's table. "You mad because you didn't get the scholarship?" Logan smirked, not even looking up from his phone. "She got attention. That's all this ever was." "She got justice," Chloe spat. "There's a difference." That night, Zara sat at her kitchen table, a half-eaten plate of pasta growing cold beside her. Her mother, a nurse working doubles, had just gotten home and dropped her bag in the hallway. She entered the kitchen and pressed a kiss to Zara's forehead. "Baby girl, what a week." Zara gave her a small smile. "You heard?" Her mother gave her a look. "Heard? I got 3 texts from co-workers whose kids go to Lincoln. You made the news, Zara." Zara winced. "I didn't want to go viral." Her mom chuckled. "You didn't, but your truth did. And I'm proud of you. So proud." Zara looked down at her hands. "I didn't think anyone would believe me, even with the footage. Some people still think I cheated." Her mother pulled out a chair and sat beside her. "People will always believe what makes them comfortable. Doesn't mean it's the truth. You showed who you are. Let the rest be noise." They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Zara whispered, "It still hurts." "I know," her mother said softly. "But you didn't let that stop you. That's what makes you powerful." Later that week, Zara was called into the main office again. Principal Dean sat behind his desk, a large manila folder in front of him. "I wanted to share something with you," he said, motioning for her to sit. He opened the folder and turned it toward her. Letters. Dozens of them. Emails from teachers at other schools. Notes from former students. Messages from education advocates. Even a handwritten card from a woman in another state who had read about Zara's story online. All of this, Dean said, came in over the past 3 days. Zara's eyes widened. She picked up one letter. "To Zara Thompson, you don't know me, but my daughter is in 8th grade and wants to be an engineer. She saw your story and told me, if Zara can stand up to her teacher, maybe I can speak up too. You're changing more lives than you know. Thank you." Zara blinked fast, swallowing emotion. Dean leaned forward, his tone gentle. "I know this hasn't been easy, and there's still a road ahead. But I want you to know you're not walking it alone." Zara nodded, voice quiet. "Thank you." But behind the scenes, something darker was unfolding. That same day, in a dimly lit kitchen across town, Logan Barrett sat with his father, Mark Barrett, a real estate broker with strong ties to the school board. Mark sipped his coffee and scowled. "This is getting out of hand," he muttered. "Grayson was a damn good teacher. They let him go over a girl's feelings?" Logan didn't answer. Mark shook his head. "Now the whole school's turning into some woke circus. If we don't nip this in the bud, it's going to affect your applications. We'll handle it." Logan looked up. "What do you mean?" Mark smiled coldly. "Just leave that to me." The next week, Zara was called into another meeting, this time with a different energy. Principal Dean sat across from 2 unfamiliar adults, both in suits. One was a woman with short hair and a laptop open. The other, a man with sharp eyes and a clipboard. "These are investigators," Dean explained. "They're here from the district. They've opened a review of the incident." Zara felt her pulse spike. "Why?" The woman leaned forward. "Miss Thompson, we're not accusing you of anything, but certain parties have requested a deeper inquiry into Mr. Grayson's termination, to ensure due process was followed." Zara blinked. "So, what? You think he might come back?" Dean spoke up quickly. "Let me be clear. Mr. Grayson's behavior was unacceptable, and we stand by the decision. But politically, things get complicated. Zara clenched her fists under the table. They weren't done trying to silence her. The news traveled faster than wildfire. By the time Zara walked through the front gates of Lincoln High the next morning, she could feel the stares. Some were warm, supportive. Others, piercing and judgmental. What had happened with Mr. Grayson had changed everything, not just for her, but for the entire school. But while the official story had Principal Dean's stamp of justice, there were others being whispered in corners, passed like contraband notes in hallways and locker rooms. The version where Zara was a manipulator, where she had twisted the system in her favor, played the race card, got a man fired for doing his job. Zara knew it was coming. But that didn't make it easier to hear. As she made her way down the corridor, her footsteps echoing a little too loud for her comfort, she caught fragments of conversation. She got him suspended? Just like that? Yeah, my brother said it was on camera or something. But doesn't mean she didn't cheat. I mean, come on. Full scholarship? She's milking this. Zara kept her eyes forward, her jaw tight. Every step felt like a performance now. She wasn't just a student. She was the girl who brought down Mr. Grayson. At her locker, she found a folded piece of paper taped to the metal. A childish scrawl in red ink. Hope your conscience keeps you warm. She stared at it for a moment, then ripped it down and shoved it into her bag without a word. Her first class of the day was English. Miss Holloway gave her a small smile as she entered, but didn't mention the incident. Zara appreciated that. She just wanted 1 hour where she didn't have to relive the humiliation, the accusations, the camera footage, the look on Grayson's face. But even as Miss Holloway lectured on To Kill a Mockingbird, irony bleeding from every page, Zara could feel the energy in the room. Students weren't listening. They were watching her, judging her. She pretended not to notice. Until halfway through class, when her phone buzzed. One new message. Check at Lincoln Leaks. Her stomach dropped. She didn't dare open it in class, but the weight of it was like a stone in her chest. Her fingers itched toward her pocket. What was at Lincoln Leaks? At lunch, she found out. Jasmine met her at their usual table in the far corner of the cafeteria. They'd been best friends since 8th grade, when both had bonded over their mutual love for astrophysics and Beyoncé. Jasmine was always Zara's safe place, but today her face was pale, phone in hand. "Did you see it yet?" she asked quietly. Zara shook her head. What's going on?" Jasmine slid the phone across the table. It was a screenshot from an anonymous Instagram page, at Lincoln Leaks, with over 2,000 followers overnight. A post with the caption, "You think you know the whole story? Think again." Here's how Zara Thompson rigged the system and played the victim for a full ride. Beneath it was a photo of Zara in the hallway with Principal Dean, taken from an angle that made it look like she was smiling. Cozy. Powerful. The comments were worse. She's just another attention seeker using race as a weapon. No way a student just happens to have camera footage in her favor. Grayson was strict, not racist. She couldn't handle being challenged. Zara felt nausea rise in her throat. "Where is this even coming from?" she whispered. Jasmine's jaw clenched. People are scared. They saw a teacher get taken down and now they're flipping the script. "But why me? Why can't they just—" Her voice trailed off. The answer was too obvious. Because she was a black girl who dared to be smarter, louder, and more unshakable than they were comfortable with. That afternoon, she found herself called to the guidance office again. Ms. Perez offered her tea and asked if she was okay. "No," Zara replied bluntly. "But I will be." Perez nodded. We're aware of the social media page. The district's cybersecurity team is working on tracing the source. Zara gave a bitter laugh. Good luck with that. Ms. Perez leaned forward. You know, it's not always this fast. Change, accountability. Sometimes it comes with backlash. People lash out when they feel threatened. Threatened by what? Zara asked. The truth. Perez hesitated, then said, by the idea that someone they dismissed could be more powerful than them. Zara looked down at her hands. I didn't want power. I just wanted respect. You earned both. By Friday, the school held an emergency assembly. Not for Zara, but about digital responsibility. Principal Dean's speech was careful. Legal. He condemned online bullying and reminded students of the school's code of conduct. But he didn't mention Zara by name. Didn't say the posts were about her. That silence hurt more than any insult. It felt like the school wanted her story to be over. Like they had checked the box. Grayson was gone. Scholarship awarded. Let's move on. But Zara was still here, and the backlash was growing. At home, her mom noticed the change immediately. You're quieter, she said one night over dinner. Zara shrugged. Just tired. But her mom saw through it. She always did. You know, she said gently, when I was your age, I had a teacher call me articulate, like it was a surprise, like being smart was a miracle for someone who looked like me. Zara looked up. What did you do? I graduated top of my class. Then I made sure my daughter would never forget how brilliant she was. They smiled at each other. The moment held them in place. Then Zara whispered, It doesn't feel like enough. Not yet, but it will. The next week, Zara started noticing something else. Whispers, yes, but also nods. A freshman girl with box braids slipped her a folded note in the hallway. You inspire me. A teacher she barely knew offered her a recommendation letter, unsolicited. Just in case, he said. You're going places. Even a local newspaper reached out through the school office asking for an interview. Zara declined. For now. But something was shifting. Not everyone saw her as a threat. Some saw her as hope. Then came the petition. Started by a group of seniors, it demanded Lincoln High do more than suspend a teacher. It asked for training, accountability, a review of past grades and patterns. Zara wasn't behind it, but her name was on every page. Over 300 signatures in 2 days. Principal Dean called her into his office. I didn't start this, she said quickly. I know, he said, but you sparked it. She didn't know whether to feel proud or scared. Zara, Dean said, you've already changed more than you realize. But change makes people uncomfortable. You'll need to decide how much you're willing to take on. She thought for a long moment, then said quietly, all of it. That night, at Lincoln Leaks posted one final message. This account will be deleted in 24 hours. To those who know the truth, stay loud. No explanation, no apology, gone. But it didn't matter, because Zara had learned something bigger than grades or scholarships. Her voice wasn't just a weapon, it was a torch, and she was just getting started. Zara stood at the front of the school auditorium, her breath still unsteady from the ovation that had just rippled through the room. Principal Dean's words were still echoing in her ears. For her excellence, resilience, and leadership, I'm proud to announce that she has received a full academic scholarship to any university of her choice. She could barely hear the cheering anymore. Everything was muffled, as if underwater. Her heart was loud in her chest, thudding in rhythm with disbelief. Her body wanted to collapse into the moment, to feel everything. But her mind wouldn't let her. Because this wasn't over. Not really. Not yet. She felt the weight of 100 eyes on her as she stepped off the stage. Some were proud, some still skeptical. Some, like Logan and Macy, were venomous. But more than anything, she felt a change. Subtle, but undeniable. A shift in the current. People were watching her differently now. Not with dismissal, with attention. And she didn't know if that was better or worse. The bell rang later that morning, releasing students from their assemblies and shuffling them back into the stream of routine. Zara walked the halls like a ghost, students parting for her as if she carried some invisible aura. Some high-fived her. Some whispered behind their hands. She caught one girl mouthing the words, "That's her," as she passed. She ducked into the bathroom just to breathe. Inside, she locked herself into a stall and sat on the lid, her backpack still on. She rested her head in her hands. Was this what winning looked like? A scholarship? Respect? Headlines? But underneath it all, a kind of ache. Like she had fought a war and survived it, only to realize she didn't know how to live in the aftermath. A soft knock came on the stall door. "Zara?" came a quiet voice. She recognized it, Imani Jackson. One of the few black girls in school who wasn't afraid to be herself out loud. They weren't close, but there had always been a quiet camaraderie between them. An understanding. "You okay?" Imani asked gently. Zara opened the door. "I just needed a second," she admitted. Imani offered a sympathetic smile. "They've been talking about you all over school. Some people acting like you burned the whole system down." Zara gave a small, tired laugh. "Feels like it." Imani hesitated, then said, "Can I show you something?" Zara nodded. Imani reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Lined notebook paper, worn at the edges. She handed it over. Zara unfolded it. It was a letter. Handwritten. Addressed to ZT. The words were neat but intense, passionate. They read, "I watched what happened to you, and I realized it could have been me. It has been me, not in math class, but in history, in gym, in every room where I've had to prove I belonged. You didn't just speak up for yourself. You spoke up for all of us." "Thank you," Zara blinked. Her throat tightened. She looked up at Imani, who just nodded. "There's more," Imani said. "A lot more. I started collecting them." Zara stared. "You? What?" Imani smiled. "After the footage came out, people started writing to me, sharing their stories, their silence. I figured maybe you should see what you started." Zara couldn't speak. She just held the letter and nodded. By the end of the week, Zara had received over 24 letters, some anonymous, some signed, some from black students, others from Latinos, Asians, even white students who admitted they'd seen bias and stayed quiet. All of them said the same thing in different words. "You gave us permission to speak." She read every single one. Some made her cry. Some made her furious. But each one added to a fire in her belly she didn't even realize had gone dim. Maybe this wasn't just about her test score anymore. Maybe it was bigger than that. On Monday morning, Principal Dean invited Zara and her mother to the district's Equity Board meeting. Her mother, June Thompson, had barely said a word since the scholarship announcement. At home, she'd nodded slowly and said, "I'm proud of you, baby." But her eyes had held a deep worry. "Are you ready for this?" June asked, as they sat in the school parking lot that morning. Zara looked at her mother. "No," she said honestly, "but I'm going anyway." Her mother smiled softly and squeezed her hand. The board meeting was in a windowless room at the district headquarters, surrounded by adults in suits and serious expressions. Principal Dean introduced Zara as the student whose case had catalyzed necessary conversations. Zara stood when they asked her to speak. She clutched a stack of the student letters in her hand. She looked out across the room. Superintendents, teachers, board members, people used to hearing polished speeches, but she didn't give them that. Instead, she read a letter, then another, and another. "I'm not here just because Mr. Grayson treated me unfairly," she said. "I'm here because students in this district are being overlooked, silenced, and second-guessed. This isn't new. You just finally saw it on camera." The room was dead silent. "This school," she continued, voice trembling slightly, "should not reward discrimination with silence. It should reward effort, talent, and integrity, no matter what the student looks like." One board member cleared his throat uncomfortably. Another scribbled something in a notebook. Principal Dean watched her, with a quiet pride. Zara finished with, "I didn't ask to be a symbol. I just asked to be seen. But now that I'm not stepping back." That night, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Zara sat on her porch beside her mother. June lit a candle and placed it on the railing. "What's that for?" Zara asked. Her mother stared out at the street. "For your voice," she said. "So it keeps lighting the way." Zara leaned against her. The air was quiet. But inside her, there was motion, purpose, and a sense that, despite everything she'd lost, something far more important had been found. The day after Zara's speech at the Equity Board meeting, the district's social media accounts quietly posted a photo of her shaking hands with the superintendent. The caption read, "Celebrating student leadership and academic excellence. Thank you, Zara Thompson, for using your voice." But Zara noticed what was missing. No apology. No acknowledgement of what led to her leadership. No mention of Mr. Grayson. No mention of race. It was all so sanitized, polished, neat. The kind of language that says, "We heard you, but we're moving on." By the end of the week, the letters stopped. No more messages from classmates. No nods in the hallway. Even Imani stopped texting. At first, Zara thought she'd done something wrong. She scrolled through her socials, looking for clues. But then she saw it. A post from at Midtown Confessions, a student-run gossip page. It showed a screenshot of Zara speaking at the board meeting, with a caption, "This girl really out here acting like Harriet Tubman over a math test." The comments were worse. Why is she even still talking about it? She got her scholarship. What more does she want? This is why people don't take us seriously, always making it about race. Bet she cheated anyway, just better at playing victim. Zara stopped reading. Her thumb trembled as she closed the app. It got worse from there. One afternoon in history class, Mr. Cruz projected an article titled "Merit versus Activism: When Recognition Becomes Political." It featured an image of a protest, not of Zara, but close enough. He asked the class, "Should students earn awards based on performance, or do we risk turning schools into activist platforms?" Zara didn't raise her hand, but every eye turned to her. She walked out before the bell rang. At home, Zara's mother was folding laundry when she came in, clearly trying not to show her worry. But when Zara dropped her bag and sat at the edge of the couch, staring blankly ahead, June sat beside her without a word. "I didn't want to be this," Zara said finally. "The girl who makes everyone uncomfortable." Her mother paused, then said gently, "Maybe they should be uncomfortable. But what if they're right? What if I should have just taken the scholarship and shut up?" June turned and looked her in the eyes. No one who ever changed anything did it quietly. Not Rosa, not Malala, not you. That night, Zara's inbox pinged. The sender was anonymous. Subject, "Stay in your lane." The message, "Nobody cares anymore. You're just a trend that got old. If you know what's good for you, you'll drop it before someone else does." She stared at the screen for a long time. For the first time, she considered quitting. Not school, but all of it. The fight, the visibility, the weight. The next morning, Zara walked into the school office to find Principal Dean waiting for her. He looked tired. "I received a complaint," he said. "A parent is accusing you of disrupting class. They're alleging you walked out of Mr. Cruz's room in protest and created a hostile environment." Zara stared at him. "I didn't say a word." "I know," he said, "but perception matters, and perception is being shaped very carefully right now." Her stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" Dean hesitated. "It means the school board has decided to redirect public focus. They've asked me to discourage any further media coverage or student initiatives related to your case." "You're shutting me down," she said. "I'm protecting you," he replied. "They're looking for a reason to say you were never the victim." Zara stood slowly. "I already was the victim. That's the whole point." That afternoon, she walked home in a daze. She passed posters on telephone poles, banners celebrating the upcoming statewide academic competition. Midtown High had 5 finalists. She wasn't one of them. She wasn't even invited. When she asked her AP calculus teacher why, she got a carefully worded response. "I believe in your potential, Zara. But this year, we needed to consider students who could participate without distraction." Distraction. The word rang in her ears. She found herself on the steps of the local library before she even realized where she was walking. It had always been her refuge, quiet, full of stories written by people who never fit where they were told they belonged. She wandered the aisles until she reached the back, past biographies and poetry, to a corner she loved, social movements. She pulled a book at random, The Fire Next Time, by James Baldwin. She opened it and read, "To be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a rage almost all the time." She closed the book and cried. Later that night, Zara sat at her desk and opened her laptop. She didn't open social media. She didn't scroll. Instead, she wrote a letter. But this time, not to the board, not to her classmates, to herself. "Dear Zara, you are not too loud. You are not a distraction. You are not a phase or a fad or a symbol. You are a young black girl with a mind built for brilliance and a heart that refuses to shrink. You don't owe them silence to make them comfortable. You don't owe them stillness so they can sleep. You owe yourself only this: to stand in your full truth and never, ever step back from it again." She printed the letter, folded it, and tucked it inside her binder. She didn't know why. She just needed to carry it with her. A reminder that, no matter what they said, she was still here, still fighting, still Zara. It had been 3 weeks since Zara's story hit the headlines, 2 weeks since the school tried to bury it, and just over a week since she last heard from Imani. In school, everything had changed, but on the surface, nothing had. The hallways looked the same, the lockers still jammed. The teachers still handed out worksheets like nothing had happened. But there was a shift, an invisible line drawn in the air, and everyone else had chosen which side to stand on. Zara now walked that line alone. One Friday morning, as she stepped into her first period English class, she saw something on her desk. A note, folded tightly. No name. Just a single line written in small, looping handwriting. "We see you." They don't speak for all of us. She looked around. No one met her eyes. She slipped the note into her sleeve. In the library later that day, she found another, tucked between the pages of Beloved by Toni Morrison. They erased your name from the finalist list, but you still scored top 2% nationally. No signature, no source, just truth, left for her like breadcrumbs. She didn't know who was doing it. She only knew someone was listening. By the time the whispers started, Zara had already stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria. She heard it all anyway. She's only still here because the school's afraid of a lawsuit. She probably made the whole thing up for attention. I heard her mom hired a lawyer. Can you imagine suing a teacher? But the worst wasn't what they said. It was who didn't say anything. Zara passed by teachers who once praised her, who now glanced away when she entered the room. She was learning the difference between allyship and performance. One morning in AP Government, Mr. Patel pulled her aside after class. He was one of the only teachers who hadn't changed. "Zara," he said quietly, "I got a call from the district about your essay. The one you submitted for the Youth Policy Fellowship." She straightened. "Is something wrong?" "They said you're no longer being considered. No reason given. Just a short email." Her mouth went dry. "That essay placed first in the regional preliminaries." "I know," he said, his voice heavy. "They're trying to make you vanish without a trace." She looked at him, her jaw tight. "I won't make it easy for them." That night, she opened her binder and pulled out the folded letter she'd written to herself. It was wrinkled now from being carried so often. The ink slightly smudged. She read it again. Then, underneath the original words, she began writing more. "They want quiet. I will give them volume. They want compliance. I will give them conviction. They want me gone. I will make myself unforgettable." She started small. She joined the morning announcements committee, not to read them, but to write them. She slipped in quotes by Audre Lorde and Bell Hooks, camouflaged between sports updates and lunch menus. She created a QR code flyer for Peer Voices, an anonymous student feedback survey, and posted it across bathroom walls, hallway corkboards, even inside lockers. Then, during Black History Month planning, she volunteered to lead a panel discussion on institutional bias. Nobody stopped her. Nobody dared. Not yet. One day, a girl she didn't know approached her at her locker. "I'm Jada," she said nervously. "I'm in 10th grade. I just wanted to say thank you for not disappearing." Zara blinked. "I didn't know I had a choice." Jada smiled. "You did, but you stayed." It was the first real smile Zara had seen in days, but with the ripples came the waves. The principal called her in again. "We received a complaint from a staff member. Apparently, your recent activities have made some feel targeted and unsafe." "Unsafe?" Zara repeated, stunned. "For quoting Toni Morrison?" Dean didn't answer. He didn't need to. She understood. Again. Truth, when spoken plainly, is often treated as violence, especially when it comes from the mouth of a black girl. That evening, her mother met her at the door with tired eyes. "You got this today," she said, handing Zara a formal envelope. It was from the Board of Regents. She opened it slowly. Her heart stopped. Her scholarship had been reassessed. No official explanation. Just a vague clause cited about student conduct and school recommendation status. "They're punishing you," June whispered. Zara stared at the letter. Her whole body felt cold, then warm, then blazing. "They want me out of the way," she said. "They want me erased." June nodded. "Then it's time to bring fire." Zara called Malik. He was the community organizer she'd met briefly at the board meeting. He'd handed her a card once and said, "If you ever need backup." She needed backup. He met her that weekend at a coffee shop near the train station. He brought two others, college students who ran a student justice coalition. They listened. They didn't question. They didn't play devil's advocate. They believed her. Then they got to work. By Monday, a campaign had started. Still Zara trended locally. Dozens of current and former students began sharing stories of quiet discrimination at Midtown High. Teachers who ignored, graded unfairly, or brushed off concerns. An anonymous Google Doc went viral. By Tuesday, the school board issued a rushed statement. "We take these allegations seriously." By Wednesday, a reporter from the Philadelphia Inquirer emailed Zara. And by Friday, just 5 days after the letter pulling her scholarship, her name was on a petition with over 18,000 signatures demanding it be reinstated. But none of it prepared her for what came next. A classmate named Dylan, quiet, awkward, known more for robotics than conversation, stood up in AP Physics and asked, "Why does she have to fight this hard just to be treated like everyone else?" The whole room went still. Nobody answered. And in that stillness, something shifted. Maybe just in that room. Maybe more. Zara exhaled. That night, she wrote a new letter. Not to herself this time. Not to the board. To every black girl who'd ever been told she was too much. You are not too much. You are the right amount of magic for a world that's forgotten how to believe in brilliance. They will try to flatten you. They will call your rage inconvenient, your sadness weakness, your pride arrogance. They will lie. Don't believe them. Be loud. Be radiant. Be so relentlessly yourself they can't even define what you are. Only that they are not you. And when they ask what gave you the right, tell them Zara Thompson did. For a moment, it felt like Zara had momentum on her side. Her name was in the news again, this time not as a cheating scandal, but as a symbol, a spark, a story the city's youth latched onto like oxygen in a firestorm. But with visibility came surveillance. And power, real power, always pushes back. On Monday morning, Zara arrived to find her locker open. Not just opened, ransacked. Her books were tossed, pages torn, and in the back, written in marker on the metal wall, "Get out, liar!" She stood there silently, her jaw locked tight. A few students passed by. No one stopped. No one said a word. That silence, it burned more than the vandalism. She took a picture, shut the locker gently, and walked away. She didn't report it. She didn't cry. She just kept walking. At lunch, she sat under the old oak tree outside, away from the cafeteria's noise. A girl from the year below, Layla, came and sat across from her. "Don't let them kill your light," Layla said quietly. "That's what they want." Zara met her gaze. "I don't know if I have much left." Layla pulled a small notebook from her backpack. "You do. Here." Inside were dozens of student stories, handwritten notes, drawings, testimonies of microaggressions, unfair detentions, ignored bullying. It was a quiet archive of pain and resistance. "We've been collecting these for 2 years," Layla said, "but no one listened, until now." Zara closed the book slowly. Maybe this fight wasn't just hers. That night, June sat beside her on the couch, holding the scholarship denial letter in one hand and her daughter's trembling fingers in the other. "We can sue," June said. "We should." "But they'll drag it out," Zara replied. "They'll smear us again. They'll say we're making it racial. They always do." "Zara," her mother said softly, "it is racial." Zara leaned back, tired. So tired. "I'm just a kid," she whispered. June nodded. "Exactly. And they've made you carry the burden of an entire broken system." There was a pause. Then June added, "But you don't have to carry it alone anymore." 2 days later, the Philadelphia Journal of Education published an op-ed, "When Excellence is Treated as a Threat," by Zara Thompson. The piece was raw, sharp, unapologetic. She wrote about how brilliance in black students isn't always celebrated. It's scrutinized. How exceptional is only a compliment when it's palatable. How she was praised until she threatened the status quo. The essay ended with, "You say I'm disruptive. I agree. I disrupt silence. I disrupt comfort. I disrupt systems that have existed for too long without question. And I'm not sorry." Within hours, it was shared by several educators, civil rights lawyers, and student advocacy groups. Even a former state education commissioner reposted it, calling Zara's voice necessary and unflinching. Midtown High scrambled. Suddenly, Principal Dean issued a new statement. The school welcomed a third-party review of its academic integrity policies. But everyone knew what that meant. Damage control. That Friday, Zara was called into the guidance office, but this time, it wasn't Ms. Harding who met her. It was a district lawyer, slick suit, smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Zara," he said, "we've reviewed the situation, and while we understand your frustration, we also want to remind you that continued escalation can have academic consequences." She stared at him. "Are you threatening my graduation?" "Not at all. Just pointing out that we all benefit from resolution over confrontation." Zara said nothing, but in her mind, she heard Layla, Malik, her mother, that crowd outside the school chanting her name. She stood. This meeting is over. Outside, she found Mr. Patel leaning against the railing. "I heard," he said. "Of course you did." He handed her a manila folder. Inside were documents, statements from other students, parents, even one from a former teacher who'd resigned mid-year in protest of administration practices. "You're building something bigger than this school," he told her. She swallowed hard. "But what if it breaks me before I finish building it?" Patel smiled gently. "Then let us carry you a while." The following week, Zara was invited to speak on a youth panel hosted by Temple University. The event was titled "Student Power and the Future of Equity in Education." She almost didn't go. But when she walked onto the stage and saw over 200 students, activists, and educators waiting, when she saw Imani in the crowd again, grinning from the back row, she knew her voice was bigger than this school. Her fight, older than she realized. Her courage, still unfolding. Midway through her speech, she paused, then said, "This began with a test score. But the real test wasn't multiple choice. It was, will I let them write my story? Or will I write it myself? I choose the pen." The applause was thunderous. Zara stood tall under the lights, no longer alone. Later that night, as she returned home, she found another envelope waiting. This time, it wasn't a threat. It was an apology. And a reinstatement letter. Her scholarship had been returned. Fully. No fanfare, no explanation. Just justice. Delayed, but not denied. Zara looked at the letter for a long time. Then she folded it, placed it in her journal, and wrote under it, "Victory is not silence. Victory is voice. And I still have mine." By midweek, 3 other students, 2 from Northview, 1 from a charter school across the river, came forward with stories similar to hers. Not as public, not as dramatic, but real. One had been accused of plagiarizing a paper she wrote entirely herself. Another had been told, "You're smart for someone from your background." The third? His counselor had pushed him toward safer schools, despite perfect scores. Zara met all 3. She listened. She took notes. And she gave them something most had never had before. A witness. Her op-ed had ignited a quiet revolution. Teachers emailed her in secret. Students messaged her anonymously. One school even launched a student-led audit of their grading practices. The media dubbed it the Zara effect. Zara hated the name. "This isn't about me," she told Mr. Patel. "No," he agreed, "but you're the match that lit the dry wood. You don't get to choose how fire travels." At home, June watched carefully. Her daughter was no longer just a student. She was becoming a symbol. And symbols can break. Late one night, June found Zara asleep at her desk, face pressed against a draft of a speech she was writing for an upcoming education equity summit. She gently shook her. "Z, come to bed." "I can't. It's next week. And I haven't even—" June knelt beside her. "You're allowed to rest." Zara looked at her, hollow-eyed. "What if I stop and everything falls apart?" June put a hand on her shoulder. "Then it was never real. But it is real. You are enough, even without saving the world tonight." But not everyone celebrated her. Midtown School Board quietly announced a shift in disciplinary protocol. Code for "We're tightening control." Principal Dean, who had all but vanished during the media storm, returned with a new public relations staffer. Rumors swirled about budget reviews, internal audits, and pressure from the district superintendent. A teacher Zara trusted warned her, "They want the spotlight to move on, and if it doesn't, they'll try to move you." One day, during chemistry, Zara was called to the principal's office. Again. She found Dean waiting, calm but unreadable. "There's been a complaint," he said flatly. She blinked. "About what?" He slid a paper across the desk. It was a report claiming Zara had skipped multiple classes and created a disruptive learning environment. She stared at it, stunned. "I haven't missed anything." "The attendance system says otherwise." Zara stood. "You're falsifying records." Dean smiled. "I'm simply citing what's been logged." She leaned in. "You're scared. I understand. But let me make this clear. I will not go quietly. You will not erase me." His expression didn't change. "Then I suppose we're at an impasse." She left without signing the paper. Outside the office, a new teacher passed by and whispered, "Be careful." Later that evening, Zara spoke with Ms. Harding, who had quietly resigned from Midtown. They met in a downtown cafe, away from familiar eyes. "I should have spoken up earlier," Harding admitted. "I saw it happening. I just didn't want to risk my job." Zara nodded. "You still left. That means something." Harding pulled out a folder. "These are internal memos. I made copies before I resigned. Meeting notes, emails, some referencing your case, including the directive to fail you." Zara's hand trembled as she accepted it. "This is what they're afraid of," Harding said. "Documentation." 2 days later, Zara sat across from a civil rights attorney in a quiet office downtown. The attorney, Ms. Ebeli Okafor, listened intently. "This isn't just about discrimination," she said. "It's retaliation. It's sabotage. And it's actionable." Zara felt the full weight of the words. "I didn't mean to start a war," she whispered. Ebeli smiled gently. "You didn't. The war was already happening. You just gave it a face." Back at school, some students avoided her. Others stared. A few offered subtle nods in the hallway, acts of silent solidarity. Even Imani, her best friend, seemed distant lately. Zara confronted her after class. "Have I done something?" Imani hesitated. I'm just overwhelmed. You're everywhere now, on TV, in the papers. People think we're the same, but I'm not ready for all this. Zara nodded, biting her lip. I didn't ask for this. I know, Imani said, but it still changed things. Zara lowered her voice. Does it change us? Imani looked away. I don't know yet. At night, Zara journaled again, but her entries had shifted. They were no longer just about what happened. They were about who she was becoming. I'm learning that justice costs, that telling the truth can leave you lonely, that being brave means being broken open, and still choosing to speak. She paused, then wrote, and I'm still here. The education summit arrived. Zara stood backstage, waiting to speak. Beside her stood Layla, Malik, two students from other schools who'd joined the coalition she helped build. You nervous? Layla asked. Zara smiled faintly. Terrified. Layla handed her a pin with the words, We are not anomalies. Zara pinned it on her lapel and walked into the light. Her speech was direct, fierce, measured. She told the room full of district heads, superintendents, and policy writers. I represent hundreds of students who were told their excellence was inconvenient, who were punished for being too smart, too vocal, too visible. You want to measure achievement? Start with how many students stop believing in themselves because of you. There was a hush, then a slow, growing applause. Afterward, Abeli approached her again. We're ready to file, she said. Zara took a deep breath. She was ready too. Not just to speak, but to demand change. Zara stood on the courthouse steps in her navy blazer, the early morning light drawing sharp lines across her face. The press surrounded her, a dozen microphones extended like branches. Zara, why sue the school board now? Do you feel responsible for the tension at Midtown? Are you afraid of losing your college acceptances? Zara looked straight ahead. I'm not here to burn down the system, she said, steady and firm. I'm here to stop it from crushing more students like me. Then she walked inside. The case was officially titled Thompson vs. Midtown Unified School District. The suit alleged racial discrimination, academic retaliation, falsification of records, and systemic suppression of student rights. Abeli Okafor led the charge. She was sharp, methodical, and unshakably calm, even when the school district's attorneys tried to discredit Zara with everything from minor grade discrepancies to out-of-context social media posts. They'll try to break your credibility, Abeli warned. That's the oldest playbook in the world. Zara nodded. They'll fail. The school district, meanwhile, painted a very different story. In their official response, they claimed Zara's academic integrity violations were credible, that the teacher's report was in accordance with policy, and that any further action taken was to maintain order during a period of DE, even if it meant burning more bridges along the way. They referred to her as an instigator. They denied every accusation. The board president gave a televised statement. We believe in equity for all students, but we will not be bullied into admitting wrongdoing where none occurred. Zara watched it on mute, her fists clenched. Inside the courtroom, the mood was restrained, but under that surface, fire. Day after day, testimony unspooled like thread. Zara's teachers, some in support, others evasive, took the stand. Emails surfaced, internal staff communications, where Zara was referred to as a problem and PR risk. Attendance logs were proven altered, assignments misplaced. The district's attorney tried to downplay it all. Ms. Thompson is a passionate young woman, but surely passion does not override policy. Abeli shot back. No, but truth does. One day, Ms. Reed, Zara's accuser, was called to testify. She walked into court in a crisp suit, her chin lifted high. Under oath, her words were cold. I had reasonable suspicion that the student cheated. Based on what? Bailey asked. Reed hesitated. She finished the exam too quickly, and her answers didn't match her usual style. Her usual style? Bailey repeated. Do you have linguistic or forensic training? No, but… Then on what professional basis did you accuse her? I followed my instincts. Bailey paused, then nodded. That's exactly the problem. Public reaction was fierce. Some people praised Zara's bravery. Others accused her of playing the race card, of trying to take down a good teacher, of being entitled. Zara stopped checking her mentions. Her inbox was full of threats, hate mail, some too vile to share even with June. Imani called her one night. Z, you okay? Zara hesitated, then whispered, I don't know anymore. She started skipping class, not to avoid the courtroom, but to avoid the looks, the whispers, the way teachers paused mid-sentence when she entered, the way classmates acted like her presence made them complicit in something dangerous. Even the students who supported her kept their distance. She had become a symbol again, not a person, just a lightning rod. One night, she and June sat in silence over takeout. Zara poked at her rice. Do you ever think I made it worse? June looked up. Worse for who? For me? For everyone. June reached out. Do you think Harriet Tubman felt that way when she turned around to go back? Do you think Rosa Parks wondered if she should have just stood up that day? Zara stared at her, stunned. You're putting me in the same sentence as, no. I'm reminding you that history always starts with somebody sitting down, standing up, or saying no, even when it hurts. The final day of the trial, Zara testified, again, this time under oath. The judge asked if she had any final words. She stood, looked out at the courtroom, at the reporters, at Miss Reed, at the board president, at her mother. And then she said, I'm not on trial for cheating. I'm on trial for succeeding in a system that didn't expect me to. You don't have to hang someone to destroy them. You just have to make them doubt they belong. And you almost did. But I'm still here, still standing, and I will not go quietly. There was no applause. This wasn't a movie. Just silence. A thick, heavy silence. But it said everything. The judge didn't issue a verdict that day. It would take weeks. But Zara didn't wait to live. She returned to school the next day. Head high, no makeup, no armor, just truth. That morning, a freshman girl she didn't know passed her in the hallway. She paused, turned back, and said quietly, because of you. I didn't drop out. Zara blinked, swallowed, and nodded. That meant more than any verdict ever could. It was raining the day the judge returned the decision. Not a storm, just a steady, cold drizzle that matched the quiet tension in Zara's chest. She sat between June and Bailey, her palms open, eyes fixed forward. The courtroom buzzed with journalists and quiet murmurs. Judge Rosen stepped in, eyes unreadable. He cleared his throat. After extensive review of testimony, documentation, and school board conduct, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Zara Thompson, on all counts. There was a gasp from the gallery. Zara didn't move. This court finds that Ms. Thompson was subject to academic retaliation, discriminatory treatment, and violations of her due process rights by multiple parties acting on behalf of the Midtown Unified School District. Damages will be awarded. A formal apology is to be issued. Disciplinary recommendations for involved faculty will follow. Silence. Then, a single clap. Then two. Zara barely registered them. Her eyes filled. But she didn't cry. She had cried all her tears months ago. Now, all she felt was clarity. Later that night, Zara stood in front of her mirror. She looked older, not in age, but in gravity. They referred to her as an instigator. They denied every accusation. The board president gave a televised statement. "We believe in equity for all students, but we will not be bullied into admitting wrongdoing where none occurred." Zara watched it on mute, her fists clenched. Inside the courtroom, the mood was restrained, but under that surface, fire. Day after day, testimony unspooled like thread. Zara's teachers, some in support, others evasive, took the stand. Emails surfaced, internal staff communications, where Zara was referred to as a problem and PR risk. Attendance logs were proven altered, assignments misplaced. The district's attorney tried to downplay it all. Ms. Thompson is a passionate young woman, but surely passion does not override policy. Abeli shot back. No, but truth does. One day, Ms. Reed, Zara's accuser, was called to testify. She walked into court in a crisp suit, her chin lifted high. Under oath, her words were cold. "I had reasonable suspicion that the student cheated." "Based on what?" Abeli asked. Reed hesitated. "She finished the exam too quickly, and her answers didn't match her usual style." "Her usual style?" Abeli repeated. "Do you have linguistic or forensic training?" "No, but—" "Then on what professional basis did you accuse her?" "I followed my instincts." Abeli paused, then nodded. "That's exactly the problem." Public reaction was fierce. Some people praised Zara's bravery. Others accused her of playing the race card, of trying to take down a good teacher, of being entitled. Zara stopped checking her mentions. Her inbox was full of threats, hate mail, some too vile to share even with June. Imani called her one night. "Z, you okay?" Zara hesitated, then whispered, "I don't know anymore." She started skipping class, not to avoid the courtroom, but to avoid the looks, the whispers, the way teachers paused mid-sentence when she entered, the way classmates acted like her presence made them complicit in something dangerous. Even the students who supported her kept their distance. She had become a symbol again, not a person, just a lightning rod. One night, she and June sat in silence over takeout. Zara poked at her rice. "Do you ever think I made it worse?" June looked up. "Worse for who?" "For me? For everyone." June reached out. "Do you think Harriet Tubman felt that way when she turned around to go back? Do you think Rosa Parks wondered if she should have just stood up that day?" Zara stared at her, stunned. "You're putting me in the same sentence as— No, I'm reminding you that history always starts with somebody sitting down, standing up, or saying no, even when it hurts." The final day of the trial, Zara testified again, this time under oath. The judge asked if she had any final words. She stood, looked out at the courtroom, at the reporters, at Miss Reed, at the board president, at her mother. And then she said, "I'm not on trial for cheating. I'm on trial for succeeding in a system that didn't expect me to. You don't have to hang someone to destroy them. You just have to make them doubt they belong. And you almost did. But I'm still here, still standing, and I will not go quietly." There was no applause. This wasn't a movie. Just silence. A thick, heavy silence. But it said everything. The judge didn't issue a verdict that day. It would take weeks. But Zara didn't wait to live. She returned to school the next day. Head high, no makeup, no armor, just truth. That morning, a freshman girl she didn't know passed her in the hallway. She paused, turned back, and said quietly, "Because of you." I didn't drop out. Zara blinked, swallowed, and nodded. That meant more than any verdict ever could. It was raining the day the judge returned the decision. Not a storm, just a steady, cold drizzle that matched the quiet tension in Zara's chest. She sat between June and Abeli, her palms open, eyes fixed forward. The courtroom buzzed with journalists and quiet murmurs. Judge Rosen stepped in, eyes unreadable. He cleared his throat. After extensive review of testimony, documentation, and school board conduct, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Zara Thompson, on all counts. There was a gasp from the gallery. Zara didn't move. This court finds that Ms. Thompson was subject to academic retaliation, discriminatory treatment, and violations of her due process rights by multiple parties acting on behalf of the Midtown Unified School District. Damages will be awarded. A formal apology is to be issued. Disciplinary recommendations for involved faculty will follow. Silence. Then, a single clap. Then two. Zara barely registered them. Her eyes filled. But she didn't cry. She had cried all her tears months ago. Now, all she felt was clarity. Later that night, Zara stood in front of her mirror. She looked older. Not in age, but in gravity. She remembered the girl she was before that day in Mr. Reed's class, the one who raised her hand too eagerly, trusted too easily, dreamed too freely. That girl wasn't gone. She was reforged, and still dreaming. The apology came in a bland statement issued by the district's PR department. Too little, too late. But it wasn't for Zara anymore. It was for the record. The national attention didn't vanish. In fact, it got worse. Interviews, talk shows, a documentary offer. Zara declined most of it, except for one. A local classroom invited her to speak. 6th graders. She stood in front of them in jeans and a sweater. No script. "Raise your hand if someone's ever made you feel like you don't belong," she said. Every hand went up. She smiled gently. "Then you already belong here more than they do." Summer came. Zara's graduation was quiet. She wore her cap like a crown. When her name was called, she walked across that stage, not to cheers from the crowd, but to a standing ovation from her teachers. Even the ones who never believed in her. Even Ms. Reed, who had chosen not to return for the new school year. Zara didn't look for her. She had nothing left to prove. 1 week later, a scholarship from a private civil rights foundation came in the mail. Full ride. Any school. Anywhere. Zara chose Howard University. Not because she needed to prove her blackness, but because she wanted to study law where Thurgood Marshall once walked. June cried when she told her. "I knew," she said, hugging her daughter tight. "Even when they tried to make you forget. I always knew." In Washington, D.C., Zara kept her head low and her heart wide. She made new friends, real ones. She ate cereal at midnight with her dorm mates, studied until her eyes hurt, and sat on panels about student justice. One evening she gave a talk called "The Price of Being Right." She told the full story. No edits, no sugarcoating. And when a student asked her, "If you could go back and stay quiet, would you?" Zara paused, then shook her head. "Number. Because if I stayed quiet, I would have disappeared anyway, just slower." Back home, things slowly changed. Midtown Unified introduced bias training. They revised student discipline procedures, hired a new DEI director. It didn't fix everything, but it started something. And sometimes a spark is all it takes. Years later, Zara returned to her high school for a reunion. She was a law student now, interning with a civil rights nonprofit, prepping cases, writing briefs, laughing again. She walked the hallways like a ghost revisiting a battlefield. In one classroom she found a display. Voices of Change, Students Who Made History. Her photo was on it. So was a quote, "If they can try to erase you, that means you matter." She didn't cry. She smiled and whispered, "Still here."